Доброго дня.
Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for coming. We started our work at UCMC. Today we have presentation of the document. Its content and title are quite the same. It is perception of anti-corruption reform in Ukraine regional dimension. We will not criticize the reform. We will see how it is perceived in the regions and how we can use this information so that the reform is facilitated. The report was prepared with the help of CE and USAID. Today we are working the following way. We will hear to the presentation of the report authors, and also we will listen to our speakers to find out how can we use this data so that the people in Ukraine, especially in the regions, what they should do to combat corruption. Different people read the reports and data, and how can we use them? This is a question. I'm giving the floor to Svitlana Shcherban, researcher of Kharkiv Institute for Social Research, and after the presentation I will ask our speakers to comment how to use this data in direct working activities. Take your mic, please. I would like to present the methodology of the research and the findings. Main findings: we have conducted 10 focus group interviews. This is the qualitative method of data collection on anti-corruption activities in the regions. We conducted the focus groups in 10 regions in Vinnytsia, Poltava, Rivne, Zakarpattia, Chernihiv, Ternopil, Mykola, Kherson, Lugansk and Kharkiv regions. There were in focus groups activists from NGOs, journalists, researchers and other persons who are interested in anti-corruption activities. The research was conducted from October to December 2017 in the said regions, and you see our report. It is rather big. It contains both general information on all the regions and information for every region. In particular, in our research, we focused on 6 topics: the specifics of anti-corruption activities in the region, key acute corruption problems, relations with state bodies, with local self-governments, other NGOs, and mass media sources. We learned experiences, best practices, and the problems in these relations and liaison. And also we researched main barriers in anti-corruption activities and safety of organizations and activists' work. It is very relevant topic, and also review of the anti-corruption strategy, how activists see this strategy and how they assess it. On the first topic, anti-corruption activities in the region, I can say that in general, the activities of the activists, they are very similar. The areas of work are almost the same in all regions. It is monitoring of activities and transparency of local self-governmental bodies. First of all, they investigated the budget into communal services, land, education, medicine issues, and public procurement thanks to Prozora and analysis of declarations, both of civil servants, lawyers and judges. It is also public awareness activities among population, training sessions, conferences, workshops, where people get information what it is and how to conduct anti-corruption activities. It's also investigation into corruption schemes. First of all, it concerns the work of journalists. Talking about the differences between the regions, mainly they concern the experience of work of activists, how long they have been involved in this topic, what are the achievements, who fund them, and consolidation of activity. Whether activists contact between each other, whether their relationships are successful, so whether they work together, let's say. In the report, you can see this information in the breakdown by regions. In this screen, you see the most relevant local corruption problems. If we generalize all this information, all our activists who took part in our research, they complained about systemic corruption in the regions, that the corruption is available in all areas of life. It penetrated all areas. Both population and law enforcers, they tolerate corruption, and that is the real barrier in anti-corruption activities. Talking about the following topics where corruption is overall. First of all, this is budget funds distribution. It is non-transparent. It concerns repair of roads, overhauls, building of road infrastructure, use of land plots and their appropriation, and there are many illegal construction projects in the regions and also illegal lease, and then maintenance of business. When bribes are given for licenses for selling of goods and provision of services in education and healthcare. In these key areas, the bribery is comprehensive, where bribes are given and they are demanded. We see this every day in our life, and also the system of permits demands of bribes and giving of bribes state institutions for being issued documents of permits. Political area where illegal decisions are lobbied and intransparent tariffs for communal services are set. In relations with the state bodies, the activists in all regions documented the effects of inefficient communication with state bodies, because applications and petitions of activists, they are ignored if even any disciplinary or other suits are initiated. Anyway, they are inefficient. Only in several cases it works. The first is when the case concerns concerns some important people who are known in the country. So when there is public resonance, then the cases are really investigated. Then if the second case, when the suspects in corruption, they are personal enemies of law enforcement officers. And the third case, when the person who initiates the case, the complaint, this person has some friends or relatives and top echelons of power, and the power ignores activist researches. But according to the focus group participants anyway, they tried to liaison with state bodies and local self-governments in workshops and meetings. They see strategic goal for themselves to proceed and maintain and improve liaison with state bodies with the purpose of future efforts. Sometimes state bodies may help, but in the cases when they want to improve their image as anti-corruption fighters or to fight against opponents. As concerns regional mass media sources, I would like to mention that the activists said to us that traditional local mass media, they are they support the power, the regime in power, so they would support the bureaucrats who are now in power in the region. Activists go to internet media, which they see as neutral for communicating information. There they can place information which they want. Activists say themselves that they do not have enough skills to work with journalists. They lack mass media persons' skills. They do not know how to report about their activities. This is if we talk about barriers and obstacles in combating corruption. They are high level of social tolerance to corruption, ignorance, and lack of belief and hope among population. Because if persons file petitions and zero result happens, this then turn into this lack of belief in any positive results. Also, we should mention illegal, imperfect legislation, active counteraction to anti-corruption activities on the side of corrupt bureaucrats. They ignore petitions and submissions and made pressure on activists. Part of activists, they stop the activities. So this is a very significant obstacle, and limited methods of combating corruption due to the lack of material resources, and often because the activists fund the activities themselves via their own voluntary contributions. They address businessmen on site and associations, but they still face this challenge of lack of resources and discreditation of anti-corruption activity due to pseudo-experts availability. It was present in almost every region where there are NGOs which are controlled by the governmental bodies, which says that the anti-corruption activities are efficient while they are not, and also mutual cover-up. As concerns safety of activities of these NGOs and activities, the wide pool of methods is among corruptioners, starting with psychological pressure, threats, and some text messages, emails, which are used for pressure, and the pressure through relatives and friends. They use administrative resource. For example, civil servants make such pressure. They shorten their budgets if they are state-owned. For example, some mass media sources are state-owned, and they make barriers to doing business to businesses. If have their own businesses, and also the state bodies issue fines, and also sometimes happens beaten-ins, and sometimes even murders. So homicide also take place. Some activists are suspected to be killed due to their anti-corruption activities. As concerns implementation of anti-corruption activities, we have not collected the data on assessment of the strategies because there were very few experts who knows what is happening in this area. They heard something, but they can't comment. They can't give their opinions to us. As to assessment of the strategy, they said that it would be good if the strategy is of the national level, nationwide, but at the same time it should account for regional specifics, and the roadmaps for anti-corruption efforts in regions should be in place. Many of our participants were for anti-corruption court establishment. They see that this would give really ability to succeed to the anti-corruption reform. And here you see proposals of our participants how to make fight against corruption more systemic and more successful. First is improvement of efficiency, improvement of performance of anti-corruption controlling bodies, then wide coverage of anti-corruption efforts in the country, improvement of the legislative framework because there are gaps as concerns bringing to account and real punishment of corrupt officials. Public awareness campaigns should be wide among civil servants and among general members of public. Automatization of state services and introduction of electronic technologies which could prevent corruption actions via minimization of human factor, reduction of bureaucratization and simplification of state procedures, in particular in permissive and taxation system. Mechanisms of control for watchdog mechanism should be in place at regional level, with international institutions invited and NGOs and leaders of partner countries. Also, participants say it would be good to continue reforming the law enforcement bodies as concerns their re-attestation and reshuffle of manpower. I would like to ask our experts not only to comment but also to give your proposals. I had a proposal to the participants of this survey. All participants say that the first obstacle to anti-corruption efforts was social tolerance, but on the first slide, the educational activities were trainings, conferences, workshops. This is only a portion of reply in the question. Maybe in healthcare system it is and education it is better addressed on local level. When alone with the journalists we will address this. We should just make liaison with journalists. So thanks to this report, we can generate some ideas and proposals. I would like to give the floor to Transparency International Ukraine, Mr. Yurchyshyn. Please, you have 7 minutes for your speech.
Thank you for this wonderful research. Really, we spoke about it before, and we said that it would be great to have such a rating of corruption perception in the regions that we have on the global level, and that would be a good start. And this is only about 10 regions, and we hope that this is only a start, and we hope that this survey exists, and these focus groups, they provide real understanding, and we may assume what is real in these perceptions and what is not. And the main is that we face the situation. We have anti-corruption leaders in the region, and the majority of our partners work with them. And this survey is anonymous, but we may see who said what, because this is easy to trace, and this is the first challenge we face. So if we are speaking about tolerance to corruption, that this is the problem, this is just one problem, but the absence of punishment is the main problem, because people won't believe in efficient fight with corruption if people who in all their conversations, if they are called corruptive officials, if they are not brought to responsibility, people do not trust in anti-corruption actions. So we do not explain people why they cannot solve their problems by providing bribes in kindergartens, and if people provide bribes at the higher levels, and there are role models and local deputies, local officials. They are role models for people, and if they are corrupt, we may launch any campaigns. We can say that the situation was good in Singapore, in Poland, in the European Union, but in reality, people see different things. And here, there is a big challenge for us. We build anti-corruption infrastructure, and we focused on top corruption, and we didn't build an efficient anti-corruption system at the regional level. And the anti-corruption police, before the bureau was launched, they professionally and mentally, they are not ready to fill this gap, and it is not a surprise. And in the response of the focus groups, there are such things that national police, they say that they do not have proper responsibilities. They have these responsibilities, but they should use it because they have such capabilities, institutional capabilities, and there are many mechanisms that can be used at the regional level. These are Prozoro and property registers and information about judges and prosecutors. But if there is no opportunity to get proper results, then there is disillusionment, and especially among the activists. And this work, for example, there is a project, there is a need, but we know that the success will be minimal. So here we should find that we have such examples in the regions. There are successful examples in the regions. And we should spread and communicate these examples. We should teach people to communicate among themselves. So first challenge is to bring activists to these activities, not only from anti-corruption sphere. And we thank our colleagues that they showed clearly the interaction between the people who are ready to act, ready to participate, whether it is the protection concerning animals or the activism of people concerning actions for not providing bribes in kindergartens. So there should be so activists in the region, they understand that they should fight corruption, and we should consolidate not only anti-corruption organizations, but we should also involve activists from other sectors. So we may have 50 or 60% of people in anti-corruption fight, but no country has it. So active position for change is the position of active minority, and the minority influences the majority, and they provide for them. So this was expected, and here there is non-inclusion of local component in anti-corruption strategy. So no matter what we write by the secretariat of the agencies, of anti-corruption agencies, if local activists are not included, they are not the owners of this product. And now we have discussion about creation of anti-corruption strategy, and then to provide it to national national agency for prevention of corruption. And we do some things many times, and we hope that this time we will succeed. But Chinese people say that this is not the case. And what we should do, we should go on tour in these regions, and we should present the strategy, but we should write the strategy with the regions, and through the majority deputies, through the local bodies, we should provide realistic strategy that would include essential component of local level of fighting with corruption, fighting with local problems. And also, finally, I would like to say what we saw. So this small group of activists and journalists and part of oppositional deputies, and sometimes these are the same people, this is the specificity of the local level, people work on several positions, and the bright example of this, the investigative journalist who is at the same time is the head of the local anti-corruption NGO and works with some deputy, or he or she is the deputy themselves. And the Kharkiv Anti-Corruption Center, there are three main actors, and two of them are the representatives of some bodies of power. And at the local level, the situation exists, and this is adequate. And here we should motivate them for broadening, and here we have our colleagues who are the members of reanimation package of reform, and the main idea is the creation of coalition at the local level in order to help each other and to develop and to find the mechanism to motivate our partners at local level for transparency, for education, for activists of different levels from NGOs, and how to fight for transparency and accountability. So this is the main challenge that awaits us. So by this small group of people, we won't be able to solve this problem. That's why I would like to thank the initiators, and all those problems, they are known, but here they are well described, and they are provided with good examples. I have the question to Viktor, Taran, Eidos Center for Political Studies and Analysis, and RPR member, and how can we spread this? How can we broaden this? So the active participants in the regions in Kharkiv were people who deal with kindergartens, and in Chernihiv with the tariffs business, and they didn't view themselves as anti-corruption activists, but they deal actively with the expenditures of the local budgets. First of all, I would like to thank for this wonderful research. It gave the opportunity to focus on this, and I would like to provide the answer based on the arguments, and to provide, so maybe the anecdotes will be provided in such a way with the local activists. So if we are speaking about anti-corruption, what it is, sometimes at local level and at the central level, when we are speaking about anti-corruption, about fighting corruption, we understand these matters differently. Especially at the local level, when we are speaking about fighting corruption, this is something remote. It concerns the government, big enterprises, but what we do locally concerning tariffs, local government, people don't believe that this is fighting corruption, and some things we do locally, this is not about corruption, this just simplifies life. And I was listening to the radio, and a known Ukrainian showman said that I would like to find the husband that would be able to resolve all the issues by just phone calls. And when we listen to such a person, some known person, so we are provided with such patterns about such husbands and so on. And also, locally, people often do not understand what the problem is. And on the 1st of September, you know that after the reform of the educational system, we have good schools. It happened so historically, and some schools have problems, and there were some corruption risks, but some schools were better because they have entrance examinations, and some deputies came and they wanted to decide this problem. So some people want to go to some schools, and some deputies even threaten people if these schools won't accept these children to school. But the system, they say, the system will just kill my school, because if we don't have minimum barriers, so the quality of education will fall if there is no proper selection. So there are many aspects that are really difficult, and this is viewed as corruption, but they just want to survive. And in Ukraine, corruption was the matter of survival. We should understand that we use it. Someone pays not to go to the army, and so on and so forth, and it is difficult to overcome. And I agree with Yaroslav, there should be punishment, but also there should be one more instrument. This is prevention. There should be proper rules that would prevent corruption and provide more transparency and accountability. And at a local level, there is an institutional trap. In order to adopt a positive norm, you should go to the local government and to provide some events and to work with them. And before this, if you criticize the power, this local power won't speak with you. Look what people from Ternopil say, and we also faced it during our campaigns at the local level. One person cannot take several offices, and there is no proper representation. And when we teach people to deliver information campaign, we face another trap, as in Dnipro. One part of our activists went to Filatov, and the other part of activists blamed our activists because they went to negotiate with this criminal power, and there was a miscommunication. How can you negotiate with them if they are so bad? And we should resolve the situation, otherwise we will fall in this trap once again. And there should be proper coalitions where every person will have his or her proper role. So there should be proper investigations, and journalists should write about it, but they should work together. They should reinforce each other. They should have a proper roadmap, and this is a challenge that faces us. And these coalitions can deal with tariffs, kindergartens, communal enterprises, and investigations, as it was done in Force Power newspaper was but restored recently, and they are reinforced by the coalition, and everyone has his or her role in it. And we should consolidate and develop civil society organizations at a local level, and to educate them how to work in these joint coalitions, and to restore trust, because the level of mistrust at the local level is really present. So I would like to thank you. So I would like to give the floor to the next speaker. So the center works at the regional level.
In the situation when after the decentralization, local self-governments have more budget, money, Sometimes anti-corruption is thought as a problem which is to be addressed in Kiev, whether systemic changes on site, on local law level are important. The question is when mayor and local self-governments want to be more transparent and accountable. I am a dreamer. Yes, you are a dreamer. One of the barriers, most serious barriers, is the lack of transparency in a portioning of land plots, in budgeting of utilities at local level. This is the biggest problem, and local authorities, unfortunately, upon getting more funds and more powers, they are weak. They do not become more transparent and accountable to community for the use of this increased resources they have thanks to decentralization reform. I would like to return to the topics. Yaroslav said that the report demonstrates very interesting thing, which is not connected directly to anti-corruption efforts, but it is a kernel of the problem. This is practical passive stand and inclusion of law enforcement bodies into corruption activities, and law enforcement bodies, they do not respond to the petitions of local activists. They do not register them in the unified register of crimes, and they also do not respond to the facts of threats towards activists, pressure on activists, the facts of persecutions and beatings. And national police at this level of crimes is responsible, but it behaves passively. In this report, we see, as it says, that the staff in police should be replaced, but we can remind that the reattestation procedure was fake. 94% of old policemen were reattested and became new policemen. So among them there is a big portion of impartial policemen, but also there is a portion of bribers. 95% of people, they just have changed the uniform, so no transformation of responses from police to applications filed, petitions filed by activists, we cannot expect. I think that this research could be used first of all by donor organizations, not only international but also national, who are willing and who have plans to support anti-corruption activities in Ukraine, because all thanks to this report, know how anti-corruption efforts are conducted at the national level. All people know what the legislation should be changed, why the Verkhovna Rada does not change it, but almost nobody knows the regional specific challenges which also to be addressed. First of all, by local activists, so this report could become a roadmap for those donor organizations, those institutions who want to support institutional dimension of anti-corruption activities and help activists and strengthen and build the capacity thanks to workshops, trainings, because combating corruption efforts, they should be conducted not only in Kiev by amending the legislation. The legislation and regulations in place, they also should be implemented on site. First of all, social tolerance was mentioned in the report among our population. Our population is very tired of the calls to combat corruption and those minimal results which we see. We should go not only by strengthening capacity of police but and improving their performance, but also we should improve such a component. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the strategy of public awareness activities on anti-corruption topic, but there is no plan of implementation of this strategy. That is why the measures have not been implemented. So this is the main thing, I think. To think over clearly, including at the regional level, at local level, the communicative and advertising events should be developed to address eradication of petty corruption, which could be eradicated thanks to amending thinking of our population, but not only by propaganda of impartial lifestyle, but corruption at the level of healthcare bodies, correctly build the level of public awareness campaign as to overcome intolerant tolerance to corruption, so that people do not see corruption as the method of resolving their problems in their households and in their families and healthcare bodies. So this should be this campaign, this public awareness campaign could really contribute to success of anti-corruption efforts. There is such a plan in the communicative strategy, in public awareness strategy. USAID relationship project also has important role in it. If we look at the relevant corruption problems, we see the amber production in Rivne and in other regions. We have other specifics. I am giving the floor to Bohdan, Boiko, EU Anti-Corruption Initiative. The question to you, whether donors would support regional initiatives, because there are other ideas that maybe such projects they do not support regional initiatives. Thank you. I represent the EU project, the EU Anti-Corruption Initiative in Ukraine. This is a large support program in anti-corruption area in Ukraine conducted by the EU. One of the components of our project is cooperation with Ukrainian cities and towns, building capacity of local self-governments, and at the same time for us to provide support not only to self-governmental bodies but also to actors such as civil activists in those towns and cities where we will be working. We also support anti-corruption activists and civil activists and research journalists. I would like to thank the project relationship interaction. I look more pragmatically to it as a tool which should be useful not only for donors to see focus or tendencies on site, but also I see the usefulness of this report we discussed today for the activists, not only those who partook in this research, but also to their counterparts from other cities and towns. What is the use? Why the report is useful? First of all, geographically it is of interest. The cities and towns, we see some of them they are on different places in ratings, in the Transparency International ratings could be referred, or BDO, NGO organization, doing business rating by regions. How leaders, cities, or those who have lower scores, the trends which local activists see are similar. If we look at the processes discussed and the topics addressed, the question of local population tolerance, this is a comprehensive trend. We do not see percentage in this research, but first always it said that the activists carry out monitoring of local self-governmented bodies' activity. So this is this balance. If we have problem in society with tolerance, then public awareness campaigns should be conducted with teaching and training people to decrease tolerance. At the same time, the activists focus activities on monitoring, demonstrating where there are facts of corruption. This way, they increase level of distrust in people, because people are inconfident even without this. The project interaction have this information and this report. It will help activists who took part in this survey to focus their activities in correct ways. If you see the problem in tolerance, it would be only logical to have components in your projects on public awareness activities to address this corruption tolerance. So I see on this report as on the tool for activists to see in which areas they can improve their performance. The next question, coordination of actions between activists. The trends are known, that their efforts are usually discreet. This is not new. Again, how donors support and also public awareness campaign on networking should be conducted as a tool to achieve positive changes in this area. So, as the next step in using this report, I see building of correct ways to minimize problems or to overcome the problems. The work with local activists is needed because they cannot see strategically where to move. They look into the problem, they start to resolve it, but it is ad hoc cases which do not change the trends which we see in this reform. The same concerns donor support, as you asked. And what is mentioned in the report, local organizations, they are limited in access, have limited access to resources, in particular donor resources. This is a fact. Not so many donor institutions and projects of international technical assistance which work with this. All projects which are established recently in anti-corruption area, they have public awareness, regional campaigns, so there are not few donors. An important issue is, thank you, the donors started doing this. This is coordination so that one, regions are not overpaid and other are experiencing lack of funds. For example, Slaviansk and Kramatorsk, please. The question was not about regional institutions. This was about support of grassroots NGOs which have just been established. Yes, maybe this is the risk. Indeed, there is a possibility. So the question is whether regional institutions can be eligible to meet the requirements set by donors. Yeah, this is very good specifying comment. There are some cities which are liked more by donor organizations, so why some cities are in focus of them? Because the results look more realistic in those cities, so let's build so that some cities and towns they will be interested to the institution. So donors really can focus on other cities too. I would like to focus on tiredness of people from corruption efforts. Sociological survey demonstrates that what is the problem, which is the biggest problem, corruption. What areas concern you are concerned most of all? The healthcare system, communal tariffs, social protection, welfare. So if there is no corruption, all these problems would become lower. Where the public activists are capable to explain all these things, I tried to use Prozoro for several days. I was very angry for several days, and I wanted to say that everyone is saying this. So, good afternoon to everyone. I think that nothing is impossible. The question isn't priorities of NGOs. National NGOs, unfortunately, we work with rather wide topics such as amending the legislation and the establishment of new anti-corruption bodies, and those problems of local levels such as petty corruption, education and healthcare systems, they are not in our focus, but they are problems which people may face on grassroots levels. So activists understanding this, they try to address them. So first of all, we should establish cooperation between national and local NGOs so that we can help to address administrative corruption and petty corruption on the local levels, because they are present more at the on sites. So this is the biggest challenge, how we would interact with local activists as national NGOs. So taking the list of corruption problems which are most relevant for local activists, according to this survey, they said, for example, misuses of funds by utilities. If the law which we drafted is adopted, it would be prevented. But the first question, how many local activists heard about this tool, about this law, and about the mechanisms provided by this law, and whether they are ready to advocate for the changes which would result in successful combating of corruption and utilities. So, public awareness campaigns really can contribute and to build an efficient interaction between us and bring specific results. As of today, we have the challenge, which is significant, that anti-corruption NGOs at the local level, they can turn into marginal organizations, because let's tell the truth, there are no results, and then you are under pressure, and you are always try to be discredited. It is very hard to find such people who will engage into anti-corruption activities in such circumstances. So we try to divide this big problem into several small problems. So we think that we can take some cases and address them. Continuously pressing police, prosecutors' offices, so that at least in some cases we have successes. Then we will get results, because I do not see successful anti-corruption activities. I do not think it would be good if every case ends with dismissal of your application, your petition or your complaint. Activists are always under pressure. Activists were so calm when they were saying they think this adequate, that they always are addressed with some threats. They're threatened by calls or text messages. In Kiev, we started to respond to such cases of pressure on activists when Dmitro Bulak and Yevgen Lysishkin in Kharkiv were beaten, and when there was an assault on Kharkiv activists. This is a good understanding of the problems which local NGOs face, so that national organizations some way build their cooperation with regional organizations in some other way. We have the
questions, please. I have a comment about two problems that were mentioned here. I believe, and I thank you for this report, this is a good understanding of what is going on at the regional level. Those organizations that work with regional organizations, they understand that this was going on, and now we have a source to refer to. And there is a big apathy and non-involvement of people in anti-corruption. This is connected with the fact that they do not relate their problems at the local level concerning corruption and the fight with corruption at the top level, and they do not understand how to work with these anti-corruption bodies at the higher level. So any information campaign should be directed in order to explain to people two issues. First, how their petty problems connected corruption. For example, this electric bulb in communal facilities, how it is related to the whole system. This can be built on a proper level, and petty corruption is directly related to high-level corruption. There is a direct link between the two. And I believe that any information campaign for people, in order that they understand why it is important to fight corruption, even if they are not involved in it, they should support those who are actively involved in anti-corruption activity. This is the first. And the second one, concerning the work of the regional organizations. Different roundtables and seminars, they can provide opportunity for communication, but they do not provide good results. They never provide results in the form of activity of participants. Maybe only those who actively acted before these seminars, they continue their activity. So the model of the work of on the cases we've used, we worked with declarations. We've formed in the regions the ratings, the top 5 of officials with questionable data. We traveled to these regions. We came to these officials together with the activists, and we asked them about the origin of these assets, and we said how these instruments of public pressure can be used in order to develop further. And we asked questions, and these officials even provided evidence against themselves concerning corruption. And we provided these activities in the regions, and activists continue to deal with these cases, and it is difficult because law enforcement and judiciary is inactive, but people, they better understand how to control local power, and it should be introduced at a broader scale. This is the work on cases. These are not seminars or just some materials that no one will use if it is not done in practice. We should get together in different formats, and we should work on concrete cases. People should learn how to do practical things. And the more such people we have, there will be better understanding that the only way to correct this problem we face throughout Ukraine, this is to become power themselves. But they will never understand it, and they will never come to such conclusions, and they will never be ready if they are not dealing with these particular cases. So to support the last argument of yours, I don't like round tables myself, and we brought people, good experts from Kiev. We helped activists in Chernigiv to help to deal with some tariffs for electricity. Locally, there are people who want to represent the interests of people, and if people understand these interests, they can choose the instruments. But the content is of importance, and I support your argument on this. And Alexandra says that round tables just to discuss the problem, they do not work. There should be proper goal. And if we deliver some training or roundtable, the preparation is important. And if there is anti-corruption school, yes, colleagues can come there. You can create some projects later on, and sometimes they have really good projects. But if we are speaking about a particular problem, for example, a communal enterprise, and if I say outline your problem and propose the project before the workshop or seminar, and if there are proper mechanisms, proposals, we can teach people how to do this, and it can work better. And of course there will be less participants, and it would be more difficult to report about such a seminar, because this will be individual work with people. But there should be more practice and less theory, and there are 5 anti-corruption schools that are held in Ukraine yearly, and we say that anti-corruption activists are lacking in Ukraine, and these are the same people and who attend, but there are we should raise more practical issues, and due to this research we may find out what should be started and what we should prepare to. So we have other questions. I will be brief. Short remark. Litvinevsky State Watch Organization. I believe that the answer to the question, what should be done by central organizations that fight corruption, at the local level, I would like to say that activists from Biała Cerkva and Severodonetsk, they addressed me, and in Biała Cerkva they asked where they can find information, and there were some investigations concerning communal enterprises, and in Mariupol they asked about finding information about assets of officials of transport department, and there were some assets that were not declared by the official, and in Severodonetsk they wanted to know how to follow the tenders in Prozoro, and I helped them. I told them how to do this, and what I think about such addresses. So at local level, the specialists are lacking who have time to deal with such difficult problems concerning corruption. So there are bribes in schools, but there is also such corruption as Naftogaz and other things. So I believe that it would be really great if donors and expert organizations and watchdogs, if they should look at the monopolists and Teplo Energo and transport enterprises. They should deal with them. They should understand the conflict of interest, standards, and other things. You can go to Rivne, local specialists who know well what is going on with tariffs, and they can provide this information even to Kievans. Eidos Center, the last remark, I would like to bring some positive thing in our sad discussion. I would like to call on everyone when we are speaking about high tolerance to corruption in our society. Unfortunately, we have such a thing. I believe that we should work more with our children. For the fourth year, our center, through the small academy and through other different programs, work with children. And I believe that our children are incredible. And in 10 years, they will become deputies of local councils, and they will move further. So we should educate them now. We should be their mentors, and I believe that the level of the tolerance will decrease each year. And this is not only my personal opinion. There are many people who believe so, and also we have neighboring countries, Baltic states, who introduced such a program, and in 10, 12 or 15 years, they saw colossal results in non-tolerance for corruption. And we had the sociological survey of youth and their values, and we had less positive results, I would say. And I would like to say, when we started this project together with the cooperation group, we invited different specialists, including market specialists, and Mr. Pakachuk provided such a thing. If you do, in NATO they say, if you do not know what your actions will result in, don't even start it. So thank you very much. This was a great discussion, and we have several ideas we are planning to implement following this report and this discussion. Thank you very much.